from the studios of Farm Journal Broadcast.
Coming up on Ag Day, USDA's chief meteorologist shares his forecast predictions through June.
So the very early look for summer is that we should not have prolonged periods of excessive heat for the northern plains or Midwest.
Mike Hoffman is releasing his 90-day forecast in analysis looking ahead at the markets this week.
Good weather equals fast-moving planters equals a lot of seed in the ground.
And getting one step ahead of foodborne illnesses.
Ag Day, brought to you by the Chevy Silverado, the most dependable, longest-lasting full-size pickups on the road.
Good morning, I'm Clinton Griffiths. As the northern stretches of the country deal with one of the coldest Aprils on record, planters are slowly starting to unfreeze. Later today, USDA releasing a planting progress update, and by all accounts, the pace should be much improved. So what should farmers expect from the weather the rest of the season? Betsy Gibbon reports.
As planters roll in parts of the Corn Belt,
the last few days now has gotten pretty fit, and the forecast continues to be for fairly decent weather, so we thought it's time to get rolling.
It's long overdue after a delayed start of the year from Nebraska.
Spring's kind of been a roller coaster. We've had 30-degree swings.
To Ohio.
According to the news, we've been anywhere from 10 to 20 degrees below normal. We've had snow right up till even including this morning.
And that cool weather may continue for some.
Drought may not be a real big factor for the 2018 growing season, particularly across the Midwest and the northern plains.
Looking at June, Rippey says not to bank on excessive heat in the Corn Belt, saying heat waves could be brief.
The very early look for summer is that we should not have prolonged periods of excessive heat for the northern plains or Midwest.
Most of the wet conditions will be on the eastern half of the Corn Belt.
We've got some significant soil moisture surpluses across that region, stretching all the way from Kentucky and Tennessee into Ohio and Michigan. If we can keep these steady cold fronts moving through from Canada, that should also supply rain, which is likely to be heavier in eastern production areas.
The southern plains and the southwest experiencing a much different situation. Months without rain and wildfires rolling through the countryside is creating extreme to exceptional drought on the drought monitor.
We're in a severe drought. We hadn't had decent moisture all winter, and we're approaching planting season, and we're going into it dry, so the outlook is not real good.
Rippey does not believe this year is a repeat of 2011.
There maybe was a La Nina influence in 2010-11. But again, the way it's developed and begun to play out appears to be different than what we're seeing in 2017 and 2018.
The southern plains received rain over a week ago. Rippey believes it's a sign. The weather patterns are already starting to change. Instead of 2011, Rippey compares this year to 1995 or 1996 for the U.S.
Both years featured very punishing, short-lived droughts that really lasted just 6 or 7 months, but had a huge impact on the winter wheat crop across the southern plains. But if you go back to 1996 and look at the eventual outcome, we started getting some good rains starting in May. They continued on through the summer.
He says it was a cool year for crops around the southern plains, which helped cotton in Texas.
So the hope is that this will continue to be an analog from this point forward. The news was relatively good in 1996, and we were able to salvage the summer crop season.
Until then, planters starting up around the Corn Belt and farmers hoping for the best this season. Reporting for Ag Day, I'm Betsy Gibbon.
Thanks, Betsy. Rippey says he is watching northern Missouri and southern Iowa, two areas which could see drier conditions during the growing season. In a few minutes, Ag Day meteorologist Mike Hoffman reveals his 90-day forecast. President Trump welcoming German Chancellor Angela Merkel to the White House Friday. The short 3-hour visit expected to cover key issues like international security and global trade. European officials are anxious about tariffs on steel and aluminum from EU countries, including France, Germany, and the UK. Some countries, including the EU, were given temporary exemptions that are set to expire Monday night. And if the tariffs are implemented, that would trigger retaliatory tariffs on a list of American products. Following the Merkel and French President Macron's visit to the White House, the European Union shifting to allow more U.S. beef into Europe without tariffs. In order to import more U.S. beef, the EU needs to change a 2009 agreement which allows the U.S. to export only about 45,000 tons of hormone-free beef without paying duties. President Trump vocal about what he calls the EU's unacceptable barriers of trade, saying U.S. farmers can't export their products to the EU as easily as they should. Also, the EU preparing to restrict some use of certain neonicotinoids, the move pulling the product from many farmers' hands, the EU citing bee health as its principal reason. Bayer, which makes neonicotinoid products, says the science shows restrictions aren't warranted and a risk for bees is low when label directions are followed. And Bayer says the restrictions likely mean more spray applications, an increased risk of resistant pest insects, and a return to older, less effective chemicals. The president and administration officials taking a hard line on theft of U.S. intellectual property. Now they're turning their sights from China, announcing more countries to a watch list. USTR releasing a new report identifying trade partners they feel are not protecting and enforcing intellectual property rights or denying market access from the U.S. USTR putting 36 countries on two lists, a priority watch list, which are the most significant threats, and a regular watch list. 12 countries are on the priority watch list, including China, Canada, India, and Russia. An additional 24 countries made the watch list, including Brazil, Peru, and Mexico. China making the priority watch list for the 14th consecutive year. Mike Hoffman has some crop comments to start off our week. He joins us now with more.
Good morning, Clinton. We may have record or near record cold in April for the northern tier of states, but down south, crops are off and growing. Jace Merritt snapping this picture of his boys out on an evening ride and to do a little crop scouting. Jace says it's been a wet, cold spring in the northeastern part of Texas. They've seen some uneven emergence, but corn is finally starting to look better now. Their fields range from R3 and R4 to just emerging. And taking a look at rain amounts over the past week, you can see from a week ago Saturday through Friday, pretty heavy amounts from the mid-Atlantic states all the way back through the Tennessee Valley, central Mississippi Valley, and even back into Kansas and Oklahoma. Spotty amounts back into the drought areas, as you can see there in the Texas Panhandle. We'll have your forecast coming up in a few minutes, but first here are some hometown temps.
Ever wake up wondering what does today's weather have in store? Well, with weather updates, it delivers the local forecast right to your cell phone each morning to make preparing for the day easier. Just text Weather 6 to 31313 to get started.
All right, when we come back, we'll take a sharp look at markets as we head into the biggest planting month of the year. And later, Machinery Pete stops by.
Stay tuned, folks. Coming up, we're going to talk about the powerful connection between man and machine.
And new genetic tests are helping to identify connections within foodborne disease outbreaks.
With a uniquely powerful formulation of proven ingredients, Resicor corn herbicide gives you extraordinary power.
Who wants dessert?
At least when it comes to weeds.
Here at the Agribusiness Desk, we have Mike North, Commodity Risk Management Group, Chip Mellinger, Blue Reef Agri-Marketing. Thank you both for being here. All right, what did we learn last week that gives us some perspective as we start a fresh month? Mike, we'll start with you.
Good weather equals fast-moving planters equals a lot of seed in the ground.
Absolutely, absolutely. What about you, Chip?
Yeah, well, I would agree along that same lines. It doesn't seem to be pressure in the market. So there are some friendly things underneath this market. It tells me that you're going to see some big swings going further into the growing season, which is a good thing. Volatility is our friend. You need the moves to give us opportunities.
Is weather off the table here?
No, not at all. I think the reality is we didn't put a lot of stock in the slow planting pace because traders have learned that if you give the American farmer even a small window, they will get the crop in the ground. And we saw some very friendly forecasts. Markets kind of stood still. We ran really fast into the field, got a lot planted. And to Chip's point, we didn't see the markets change a whole lot in the midst of all of that either. And so as we talk about the road ahead, there's still some holdout waiting to see what we look at for weather this summer, what kind of acreage and yield potential we have in front of us. There's lots of things that the market's still very hesitant to move on until it has absolute and concrete data.
As we look out into May and June, What are you watching? What do folks need to be thinking about?
Well, two separate things. I think probably to continue that point Mike was making in your question, well, I'm going to watch the first half of May, the weather, rainfall in Brazil. I think that's becoming an issue in the corn market's mind. It's been very dry, about 50% of normal rainfall through a fairly wet period for them. And now seasonally, it gets into their hot, dry period. So they need that rainfall for their second crop corn. It's over a 2 billion bushel crop. They export a lot of that. So I think weather is still front and center in the corn market's mind, not just our weather and how this crop goes in the ground, but Brazil's weather for second crop corn. To your second point, what should producers be watching? Take advantage of the rallies. We know that there's all kinds of different political trade wars out there, NAFTA, China, tweets that can move the market. Be willing to take advantage of the rallies and lock in margin and use the tools available to open up the top side as appropriate.
All right. Thank you both for being here. We'll check back with you later this week and keep going on these markets. It's exciting. We'll be back with more Ag Day in just a minute.
Farming has changed. Markets are riskier than ever. For customized, focused commodity marketing, contact Chip Nellinger or Adam Dreyer at 309-550-7213. Cut through the uncertainty in the markets. Give Mike a call at 608-764-0012.
Welcome back to Ag Day. Meteorologist Mike Hoffman. Mike, earlier in the show, we were talking about the outlook and the forecast going into June, July. Pretty hard to predict at this point, it seems like.
It is. I'm not going along with the flow, though. I'm not looking at high heat and the drought just expanding.
Okay.
I'm a little more confident in that. Let's hope so, because that would be the better outcome. As you can see on the drought monitor, not a lot of changes over the past several weeks. We're still seeing the extreme and exceptional droughts for the southeast part of Kansas, southwest part of Kansas, sorry, panhandle of both Oklahoma and Texas back into the Four Corner region. It has improved a little bit over the northern plains going back a month. You can see how that area has shrunk up slightly. Week by week, you can see things have remained kind of dry, though, southeast Georgia into parts of South Carolina, but it just kind of stays the same through this area, even though we have had a little bit of moisture east of the Rockies in this area. That can help us in the long run, but it takes a while to get out of a drought like this one. Here's the jet stream as we start the week. Pretty good storm system, big cutoff low over the northeast. Also, almost a cutoff low over the northwestern portions of the country. In fact, the model tries to cut it off over the southwest by Wednesday as the ridge builds up and brings the heat back to the eastern corn belt. Then as we head through the rest of the week, that trough slowly comes eastward, so we'll be cooling things down again over the northern plains as we head through the end of the week. Then we kind of go zonal over the weekend with another trough developing by early next week into the northeast, and that means heat again for the west. Kind of a changing jet stream as we've seen lately. Temperatures this week, I'm going above normal, central southern Mississippi Valley all the way to the east coast. Below normal from western Minnesota down through the southwest. Above normal northern California and the Pacific Northwest. Precipitation this week then. Great Lakes, much of the central and northern Mississippi Valley back into Colorado and southward into northeast Texas above normal. But below normal for the east coast and the southeast. Southwest, west coast, northwest, below normal as well. May temperatures going above or below normal for the northern Great Lakes northward, above normal for the southwest, but most of the middle of the country, growing areas near normal. No below normal temperatures for June, but you can see east, west, and south above normal. Kind of the same into July, although most of the growing areas, the Corn Belt near normal. Precipitation, though, above normal for much of the Mississippi Valley through the southeast, below normal in the northwest. That's a look across the country. Now let's take a look at some local forecasts. Heading to Twin Falls, Idaho today, partly sunny, a couple of showers, high of 59 degrees. Peoria, Illinois, much warmer, lots of sunshine, high up to 76. And finally, Jacksonville, Florida, mostly sunny and on the pleasant side, high of 79.
Still to come, Machinery Pete is here with a look at some aging fixtures in farm country. And later, foodborne illnesses can be dangerous, but new technology is aiding in the fight.
Your vote could help a community organization win $10,000 and send a farmer on a dream sports trip. Vote now and help make dreams come true at powertodomore.com. Sponsored by Resicor Corn Herbicide.
Not everything in farm country is shiny, new, or young. That doesn't mean the work won't get done. Machinery Pete explains.
It's been almost 3 decades now I've been compiling auction prices, folks, and I gotta tell you, the longer I do this, the more I'm just amazed at the powerful connection between man and machine. That was really driven home last week by a pair of tweets. Now, of course, we've had a late start to the planting season, and we saw a tweet from Van Larson in Kansas. It's a picture of his father, 91 years old, pulling a planter. And Van wrote that Dad started planting, pulling a 2-row planter behind 2 horses. Now, a couple days later, we saw a tweet from Farmer Tim, who's a blogger, and here's a picture Tim posted, and this is of his father, and he said, "Dad's having trouble getting around without a walker." And Farmer Tim had a gentle conversation saying, "Dad, you know, maybe it's time to back off a little bit on the tractor duty." Well, Farmer Tim's dad had his own idea, and he put another step on the tractor so he could just keep on farming. It's a way of life. Now, last Thursday, up in Wadena, Minnesota, was a farm auction by my friends at Osnes Auctioneers. And Cody Osnes sent me a note, and he said, "Pete, this was a farm estate auction for Richard Reamer." He said Richard was 98 years old. He passed last November 1st, and he farmed right up till the day he died. Now, on Richard's auction was this John Deere 6620 combine, just over 4,000 hours on it. And it sold for $14,500. Now, this thing was shedded every day. And Richard, I tell you what, you'd be smiling down, you'd be proud, because that 6620 sold for over twice the current average auction price on a John Deere 6620.
Good stuff. Thanks, Greg. Up next, we'll look at some new research helping to keep our food supply safe.
Is now the best time to sell your old equipment? Pete's Pick of the Week keeps you up to date on current market prices, making it easy for you to know when to sell your equipment for the best possible price. Text Pete6 to 31313 to get started.
In the Country, sponsored by Kubota. Tractors, hay tools, utility vehicles, mowers, and more. Visit KubotaUSA.com today.
Foodborne illnesses and recalls happen from time to time, and the health implications can be serious. A new technique that relies on genetics is revolutionizing food investigations and identifying common causes in scattered and seemingly unrelated illnesses. Kathy Young reports.
The most recent E. coli outbreak involving romaine lettuce from Yuma, Arizona, hits close to home for Lauren Bush, who got extremely sick after eating a spinach salad years ago.
Within less than a week of eating the salad, I was hemorrhaging. I remember turning to my parents and saying, I'm really scared. I mean, do you think I could die before they figure out what it is?
It took doctors more than 6 months to find the source of her food poisoning, E. coli bacteria in the spinach. That was back in 2006. A new technique that relies on genetics is now changing the way the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention connects the dots on foodborne illnesses.
So it's really important for us when we're doing an investigation to be able to connect the person in Connecticut to Texas to Colorado to know that they're all part of the same outbreak.
By doing whole genome sequencing on DNA samples from different people, scientists can see if it's the same germ. Initially, health departments sent samples to the CDC, but now all 50 states are getting money to help them set up their own labs, like this one in Colorado.
So all in all, the process from start to finish can be achieved in less than 72 hours.
So far, the work has mostly focused on listeria, but by the end of the year, labs are expecting to be using it in more common causes of food poisoning. The CDC estimates about 3,000 people die each year from all forms of food poisoning combined.
But we're actually working towards sequencing all foodborne bacteria in real time, so that would include things like Salmonella and E. coli.
So the sequencing occurs in this area?
While whole genome sequencing didn't detect the current romaine lettuce outbreak, it was used to help link cases in more than a dozen states.
We can see that the bacteria in that outbreak are very closely related to one another.
For Bush, who is still suffering from complications, she believes getting the word out sooner could help countless people.
The turnaround time in my own case was so long. I mean, think of all the product that was out there that families continued to buy.
The new DNA testing could transform how and when outbreaks come to light. Kathy Young, Associated Press.
And that's all the time we have this morning. We're sure glad you tuned in and spent part of your day with us. For Mike Hoffman and all of us here at AgDay, I'm Clinton Griffiths. Have a great day.
AgDay, brought to you by Ram Commercial, America's longest lasting heavy-duty pickups.